For our next session, we're going to look at how AI is evolving into autonomous decision-making. Insight Partners Managing Director George Matthew welcomes Bin Mu of Adobe, May Habib of Writer, Mohak Sharma of Honeyhive, and Manny Medina of Paid for a panel on the opportunities that are arising with autonomous agents.
The previous generation of LLMs were doing a single step in your pipeline. They were not doing the entire task end to end. And I think there are like three key reasons this has been possible. I think the first has been really advances around reasoning. Agents can now reason through multi-step problems. They can plan, they can execute. I think the next advance has really been around autonomy. Agents are autonomous in nature. So agents can execute something end to end. They can also, at the same time, reflect back, critique. And then I think the third sort of bigger unlock that no one has been talking about is memory, actually. Context windows have expanded massively over the last, I would say, 18 months, and models can also recall more of that context. That means agents can be more long-running, more stateful. They can do a lot more. They can almost do 8 hours of work today instead of a single step in your pipeline, like summarizing an email, as an example. So when I think of agents, I think it's an autonomous system that can essentially maintain state and be able to act on behalf of the user with a certain degree of autonomy.
Ben, as sort of Chief AI and Data Officer of Adobe, if you can kind of give a little bit more detail on what you're seeing the impact, particularly in the last 18 months, right? Because there's been a pretty substantial shift that we're seeing, particularly in the enterprise, and how that's played out at Adobe, both for the products you're building, as well as just the organization that continues to evolve with the light of agents kind of being so prevalent inside the organization.
Absolutely, thank you. I'd like to make complex answers simple. So with the agentic, and as it's related to, as it's evolving to autonomous and everything, what it actually does is if you look at the workflow, it will shorten the workflow and remove the human middleware away from the workflow. Because the most unpredictable variable for any workflow process is human being. I'll give an example of what Adobe we're building and offering to our clients already. Some clients already use that. Is the Adobe Experience Platform is going full agentic. What that means is just think of a scenario. A CMO wants to do a marketing campaign. And in the past, it needs to have campaign theme, have your marketing team to design it, have the analytics team to pull out information, to actually look at the trend and everything, then have the design team to design the messages, and then send to execution team for execution. Then just it's a lengthy process just from ideation over to execution to monitoring. Now in the agentic world, it's all can achieve through direct human and AI interaction through agentic, from pulling the insights to ideation, to design a message, to execution, to monitoring. So what that means, the workflow is significantly shortened, cycle time significantly cut. And it impacts a lot of the functions within the corporate. So it's all up to us to determine and also to build it, to adopt to the new AI age.
May, how has that changed just the journey at Writer? Because certainly it's been quite an impressive few years for Writer. This particular last 18 months has probably sort of shifted your own thinking as a founder and a builder. Maybe you can kind of highlight, how that real sort of agentic sort of wave has impacted the products that you're bringing to market today.
Yeah, totally. So agents as software that can reason, plan against an outcome, an objective, double down, on themselves when that objective isn't achieved. That's a huge real step function change in the capabilities of the models. And we've been full stack since the very beginning, which means we build LLMs and productize all the way up to the solution layer for customers. And today we see ourselves as a platform for AI native operations, because it really is that different to design for a agentic first world for exactly the reasons that you laid out. And I think the biggest obstacle right now in customers getting real tremendous value in what they're productizing on Writer is actually the human component. Because you could give folks, and we do, a platform for building out a autonomous system, and with Writer it's semi-autonomous, right? There's a lot of guardrails and compliance that goes in that are very native to the kinds of industry-specific workflows that we do in the enterprise. But when you do that, so much of the bottlenecks do tend to be, what do we do with the people? And rather than going for minimum and essential human intervention, most folks are actually rewiring for maximum human intervention. And it's actually months of being in production before folks are really thinking about, this system we use for compliance here, we could actually replace with an agent. And not only does that cut out XX millions, but you've got this radical simplification that is possible now in this part of the workflow. And so, in addition to a real full-featured agentic platform to customers, I think we are really trying to challenge and encourage them to think much bigger about the radical simplicity they can bring to so much of their operations if they're willing to rethink, the calcification of functions, systems, data, people in their processes.
So as May kind of alluded to that radical simplicity, and Ben started to show some examples of how things are really shifting at Adobe, both from a product and what the productivity of Adobe's teams look like. Manny, maybe one of the things that you can really sort of push on is, you kind of commented when we were prepping for this that literally half the workforce can become agents. Do you want to kind of expand some of the thought on why and how and where you see this playing out?
Yeah, so the context there is a paid, we build the business infrastructure for agents to be able to monetize and measure the ROI of what the agent is doing. And so a lot of pay gets deployed on the agent builders. And one shift in the pattern of monetization for agent builders is that the agent builders are going after two things very aggressively. One is open headcount, and the other one is BPOs. And I feel like BPOs are the lowest animal in the food chain right now, because they are themselves conflicted in the world of they employ a lot of human beings very cheaply in a world where agents can easily replace them and they're not moving. So, I had so many experiences in which an agent builder would say, well, I'm just going to capture 20% of the BPO budget, and that's going to be my budget now. And then you're going to fit an agent within that. And we see that more and more again. And now it's that, after the BPO is done, then you're going after open headcount. So what that means is that instead of hiring people, now you're hiring agents to perform exactly the same tasks. And as the context window gets bigger, as the workflows change per May and to become human agent collaboration, you will start seeing org charts in which people are managing agents. Matter of fact, the EU AI Act mandates that an agent has an owner, meaning a boss that is responsible personally for the agent performance. So either through governance, through mandates, through sanctions, et cetera, what you're going to see is this evolution in such a way that a good half of your workforce will be agentic in probably less than 5 years, current course and speed.
And maybe as we're going through this shift, and it's a pretty dramatic one, there's a lot of questions that have emerged on, are these agents reliable enough, right? Do they work in a way that, say, for instance, a human can work? In some cases better, some cases not. Maybe we can spend a little bit of time sort of really pushing on understanding where that reliability is today. So maybe you can kind of start off with the agents that you've built, the agents that you're kind of seeing in the enterprise. How do you think about getting highly reliable systems, particularly into production?
It's especially important to understand what makes highly reliable when everything now looks the same. And when we launched our full stack messaging 18 months ago, what we told our field was, this message will self-destruct in 12 months, i.e., in 12 months, everyone is going to say they've got a full stack platform. And you really look at so many of these applications, they all look the same. OpenAI yesterday launched a product called Agent Builder, which we launched a year ago called Agent Builder. And so, this is very important, because what is going to make these agents good and scalable is going to be under the surface. You're not going to be able to see it on the surface. We announced last week MCP integration with Snowflake and Slack, and we've got HubSpot coming. And the ability for us to get actual accurate results right out of these MCP integrations have had a huge part to do with the fact that we built our own MCP gateway, and really being able to think backwards from these industry-specific workflows that are knowable, right, and tie it to the way that we will rewrite a tool description, for example, when we understand the intent of a user query. These are all things that lead to much more reliable integration of data, much more reliable context management. And it's in that context engineering under the hood, based on data source, based on workflow, based on type of data, that you get the reliability and consistency. And it's especially important given that you are, for the most part, in these semi-autonomous flows, daisy chaining together many different steps of a workflow. I want you to go to this inbox and triage invoices, and then tell me whether these requirements are in the invoice. If not, you're going to email the vendor. If we're good, you're going to get it to the ERP. That's a lot of things to get right. That's a lot of context engineering of that context window. And the vast majority of things that people are building aren't scaling, right, because of a failure mode, right, on those elements. And then you've got the governance component, right? If you look at what OpenAI launched yesterday, you've got a guardrail integration at the agent level. Well, guess what? IT doesn't want that. They want it up here, right, so that you're actually federating out policies on guardrails. What does IT want? You want us to be able to integrate with your guardrails if they sit in AWS, right? That interoperability, right? And the labs just simply aren't understanding that, aren't building that. So we've got such a ways to go. When people ask me what's hype, what's real, technology can do it, but really being able to get the systems and the infrastructure to scale it reliably, consistently, whether George runs it or May runs it, we get the same answer. That really doesn't exist in most agentic deployments that we are encountering.
So Ben, May mentioned a word, failure. What happens today when you think about the practitioner view of an agent that you have in production? We know what to do when humans fail in an organization. Mm-hmm. How do you handle failure when an agent doesn't work as advertised?
Very interesting topic, and I want to be very, very honest. I'm not doing a lip service.
You're only among 500
500
of your closest friends, 3,000 online, so feel free to be as honest as you want.
But very honest answer is, it's hard to know. We were having a conversation early on agent agentic observation, tracking the failure or failure rate, so on and so forth. And then the critical component is, what's the definition of fail? How do you know that? Who tells that's a fail? And how do you define that metric and saying, okay, if you meet this criteria or this threshold, it's a fail? So these are all very technical conversations going on now. But the way also looking at that is, if we look at agents and agentic overall, the goal is here to make our life easier. Just like when software was first launched, any single software, even Microsoft Office, when it's first launched, the goal is to help human beings to do job easier, simpler. And look what has been evolved. We all work for software now, as opposed to software working for us. So the intent of that becomes really is a shift, which is I'm still gravitating to what point and how do we track the agent performance, and want to know if the agent is telling the truth or producing the right output, sending to the downstream, and also accepting from the upstream. It could have a variety of techniques, such as is forcing or reinforcing a risk level of the agent output straight telling is if you are not 99% confident of your answer, produce an answer saying, I don't know, or asking back to have another loop back. I'm using that as a very, very simple example. Just to describe it is just like treating and training a human being from kindergarten all the way to university to work. It's a journey, it's a process, it requires that training. That muscle memory, we don't have that muscle memory until we're mature. So it also for the agent, also similar to that. But what is the right way of shorten that training process? There are a variety of ways of doing that, and we're still exploring that.
You know, this is one of the things that I keep consistently hearing now. As agents are coming into production, you have to onboard it. You have to train it. You have to treat it just like any other worker, despite it being potentially a digital worker. And so, Mark, if you can just spend a few seconds, maybe it's a nice little commercial for what Honey Hive is also doing, just on observability and kind of making this really make sense. And maybe you can define what LLM agent observability is in the context of what you've been up to lately.
No, I think we might be a little biased here, but our worldview over here is that observability and evals are ultimately what help you drive reliability when you're building an agent, right? And I think I would like to demonstrate this with an example. Let's say you're building a customer support chatbot. The agent is supposed to understand the user's intent. It's supposed to look up knowledge from a knowledge base. It's supposed to make almost 15 decisions until coming up with the final answer. And so a lot of reliability problems really stem from where in the process is the agent breaking down? Is it failing to understand the user correctly? Or is it failing to fetch the right context from a knowledge base? Is it failing to escalate it to a human when it's necessary? And so observability helps you get this very fine-grained view of what your agent is doing. So you have visibility. You can actually see what the agent is doing, what are the different failure modes, where exactly is the agent going wrong. And then evals can help you essentially automate some of the process of supervising that agent and really checking every single step that the agent works towards to be able to get to the final answer. And so when we think about observability, it really is helping humans align these systems by first understanding what exactly is failing, and then encoding those failure modes into automations. So you don't have to necessarily check the agent's work again and again. A lot of the supervision that you're initially doing can be more repeatable in nature. And so maybe there's another agent or a model. It's essentially checking the agent's work and only escalating it to a human for the 5% of failure modes, where an agent might be going off track, the agent's entropy is extremely high, it's not very confident.
What do you mean by that, the agent's entropy might be high?
I think when you think about an agent which is trying to do a support use case as an example, the agent might be confused about which tool call to make, as an example. Its particular token entropy, like the probability of its tokens, might be in the 0.6% range, which is very low. And so when we think about entropy, it's really how confused is the agent or how confident is the agent to come to the final answer. The more confident the agent is, the more you can almost be sure that the agent is on the right track. But if the agent is not confident in and of itself, that's where usually failure modes happen. Failures in reasoning, failures in memory, failures in context recall, or being able to select the right tool, so on and so forth.
Manny, when we think about these agents now potentially replacing large swaths of human work, right? And you kind of alluded to one of the most interesting examples that have emerged, particularly in the last 2 years, where literally 7,000, 8,000 folks in a BPO could be replaced or reimagined with 350 people in a generative model. And there's some live use cases, and you kind of alluded to that. Just how does that really work today in terms of the sort of change? Is that even a feasible thing? Is that a pipe dream? Why would you even go about doing it, considering how difficult that could be in the overall journey? Just expand a little bit more on just the impact of literally this transformation that's happening.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that we're failing to talk about is the failure of humans and the failure of BPOs. So like, if you get a job at a BPO answering, supplier calls or inbound calls or customer services calls, you have high turnover, you have loss of context between one shift and the next, you have absenteeism, you have like all these like compounding problems that you don't have with agents. So in reality, you're trading a problem with another, and that's the way that we need to think
Basically,
about it.
because it's like rote, repeatable work that's just not that great.
100%, 100%. So like you're trading one problem with another, and then the question is, would one problem get better over time versus the other? The human beings who are doing BPO work are not getting better over time. We have lived with that solution for over 20 years. The agents are. Like all these problems that, one of the dictums that I think most agent builders have right now is that if something doesn't work right now, it will work in 2 months. And most agent builders build that way, like build with the fact that everything is getting better. And it's not because you're getting better, it's because the models are getting better, the knowledge about your particular industry insights are getting better. So the replacement is happening slowly, right? So they don't come and say, I'm going to take 100% of my BPO work and I'm going to send it to an agent. They're saying, I'm going to take some volume and I'm going to send it to an agent. And right now, most IT organizations are buying one of each. Like they're buying a number of solutions, they're dividing up the traffic and see what performs. And they're doing the same with the BPO. They're treating as another agentic solution with the same number of failure rates and ROIs, et cetera. And that's sort of like the replacement cycle that's happening. On the full-time equivalent side, they're just hiring less and more slowly just to see it through. So instead of saying, I'm going to open 10 recs for data engineers, I'm going to open 3, and I'm going to hire 10 agents to come and do the work, and we'll see what happens. So we're still in a little bit of trial and error mode, and everybody read the MIT report which said 95% of agent pilots fail. So it's not all roses, but it is a trading off problems with the distinction that the agentic ones are getting better over time faster than the human solutions.
Interesting. So one of the things that I wanted to explore and kind of closing this session out is just how fast the world is accelerating as we speak. And I know we've had the slide up from the beginning of the session, and people are probably wondering, what is that slide all about? So to put some context around it, today we're at a point where the token generation coming out of a model is about 10x faster than a human, right? Because humans can think at the speed of about 10 words per second. It's about the approximate sort of rate of our human thought. Models are at a point where we're at 100 words per second, right? So 10x human speed. So the idea that a model can get to 1,000 words per second, or perhaps 100x human speed, is not in the realm of science fiction. That's literally going to happen within the next few years. The other axis is really the view that the number of parallel copies of agents that are doing things like we just described is pretty de minimis at this point. At best, in many organizations, we're talking about 100 agents, not even 1,000. But what happens in a world where we get to 100,000 agents, 1 million agents per organization? So Elon Musk talked about 10 billion humanoid robots emerging in the next, I don't know if he's doing his math correctly, because he said in 25 years and yet said 2040, but somewhere between 2040 and 2050, we have 10 billion potential humanoid robots emerging. But in a lot of ways, this agentic frontier that we're talking about could be as profoundly important as anything that we're going to see as far as human robots doing humanoid tasks themselves. So maybe in closing, we can kind of talk a little bit about that future that we might see, and maybe in a lightning round. What do you guys see different in the next 5 years, because you have models that can be 100x faster than humans in speed of thought, and perhaps even as much as 100,000 parallel copies of an agent inside of an organization at any given time? So Ben, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, well, great question. And as the chief data officer, I would
I figured you'd have point of view on this.
Absolutely. So yes, there will be maybe millions of agents, tens of thousands of agents per organization, but the foundation is data. It's still
It's a good setup.
Yes, as a chief data officer. The core data needs to be trustworthy and also have that built so that enable the proliferation of agents still have the same source of truth, and getting the right answer, getting the right output is critical. Then as it's evolving, perhaps there will be a real governance or government for agent, just like government for human being.
May?
Right now, if you think about what we're all trying to do in our organizations, we're trying to take all of the intelligence around processes and ops and the data that humans have in their head, and we're encoding that in AI. The next big step function change is how we're going to encode and use the intelligence that comes out from agents interacting with agents and agents proactively prompting humans. And when we look at our research roadmap, this is what's on it. How do you really build the governance for what really becomes super intelligence inside of your company, where frankly, in 3 to 5 years, AI is going to be dumbing things down so that we understood what these million parallel copies of a certain process, right, have actually done to achieve an outcome. I think we're going to be there way sooner than 10 billion humanoids walking the planet. And in a lot of ways, what we're building here are our digital brains, right, that are going to have a much bigger impact on the way data is created and harnessed inside of an organization.
Manny?
I think that along the lines of what May said, I think that we're going to see org charts that are going to be vastly dominated by agents with very little humans in it. And agents that will appear and disappear sporadically depending on the task that needs to get done or the challenge in front of you, et cetera. And we're already seeing humans being sort of delegated to deal with other human beings, so that agents can actually do the work and replace the workflows that were human first to becoming agent first. Funnily enough, we were doing a study around the tax implications of having agents replace humans, because as you know, agents don't pay taxes.
Not yet.
And that's eroding. It's eroding the tax base for most places where jobs are being replaced by agents. So the question is, what happens to all the I don't know if you read the report at Stanford that said that in the sub 25-year-old subgroup, unemployment is up 13%. So what is the new generation of young people going to do? And I think that they're just going to become agent builders. Because
agents will hire them.
There you go. As trainees.
Serious, yeah. Human verification.
100%. I guess there needs to be a solution. This contention cannot stand, so there will be a resolution along the lines that May says.
Mark?
Yeah, I think scalable oversight is going to be one of the biggest problems of our lifetime. I think especially when we're dealing with a world where there are 10 billion agents in the enterprise, how do you actually supervise all of them perhaps the same way that we're supervising humans today doing this work, right? But there's no way humans can act as the supervisors in that sort of a world, just given the fact that agents are working much faster than us. And so I think there needs to be a lot of research. Our own research direction has been around this idea of how can agents supervise agents, and essentially make sure that within an enterprise, if you have 10 million agents, they're not going out of whack, right? They're all on track, doing the right things. They're aligned with your organizational policies. I think we're seeing something along this line with Cursor as a large example, where majority of developers today are spending less time executing and really more time supervising the agent. But that model as well is not very scalable. And so I think that's where at least our insight at Honey Hive comes, this idea of agents supervising agents really in the long run.
Well, in closing, hopefully everyone has had a sense of what is a vastly accelerating future that's pretty much arrived at this point, particularly in the last 18 months. The future is agentic. This distinguished panel has done an amazing job just like helping us understand where the world is headed. We look forward to continuing this journey with everyone in this room and everyone in the world as agents are the future. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.